my name's Casey Shutt. I'm the pastor of King's Cross Church in Oklahoma City, and this is Little Church, where we think about what it means to make the home a site of worship and spiritual formation. And so it's been sort of a lead up to this point, and now I want us to get into what the Bible has to say about it. So we're going to look at Deuteronomy chapter 6. This is a key passage when it comes to this topic of little church. And if you're joining us, it's ideal, optimal for you to have a Bible with you, because we're going to be looking at Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 1 through 9, and it'd be helpful if you could follow along. I'm going to read the passage, and then we will discuss. It says, "This is the commandment, the statutes, and the rules that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you, that you may do them in the land to which you are going over to possess it." And by the way, this is after God has delivered the people of Israel out of Egypt, and he has given the law. And these are the instructions that are following that before they enter the promised land. But after God has constituted them as a people around the giving of his law in the wilderness. He says, verse 2, that you would do this law, verse 1, that you may fear the Lord your God, verse 2, you and your son and your son's son, by keeping all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you all the days of your life, and that your days may be long. Hear therefore, O Israel, and be careful to do them, that it may go well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. And then this is Deuteronomy 6:4, the famous Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So I want us to consider a few questions related to this text of Deuteronomy chapter 6. And the first question is, well, let me say this actually before we jump into these questions. What God is commanding, he's just delivered. In chapter 5, the 10 commandments are given. Okay, so that's kind of the context. And God has commanded the people, the older generation, to teach the younger generation, that parents would teach their children the marvelous deeds of the Lord. It's similar to what we read in Psalm 78 a few videos back. But I want us to consider several questions, and that is why. First of all, why should we teach? What's the result of our teaching? And this is a question that educators don't ask often enough. And probably in most things that we do, we don't step back often enough and think about why it is we're doing what we're doing. What's the purpose? What's the telos towards which our energies move? And so I want us to consider that. Why? Why are they teaching these things? Look at verse 1. One reason is that the people, they've received the law, not just so that they can kind of like post them at their Capitol building, but no, look, verse 1, so that they can do them, to do the law, right? And not only that, verse 2, fear of the Lord, right? That the giving of the law and the teaching of the law would produce obedience, and that it would produce the fear of the Lord. Verse 3, also, that it may go well with them. that if a society or if a culture, if the people of Israel follow the law, the Ten Commandments, but not just that, but all of God's instruction. I mean, Torah, the law refers to not just the Ten Commandments, but the instruction of the Lord. And so if the whole culture, if the whole society of Israel is hearing, right, verse 4, hearing what God is saying and doing what God is saying, there's flourishing that results. So that's one of the purposes, is flourishing. Right? Verse 3, that it may go well with you, and that you would multiply greatly, that there would be fruit within your people, fruitfulness. So that's a little bit on the why. Next question, what? What are they to teach? Well, look at this, verse 6. These words, they shall be on your hearts, which means you not just on your minds, but when Hebrew talks about to know something, it's not, the Greeks were sort of thinking more in terms of a cerebral understanding, but for the Hebrews it was a more heart-shaped, mind and heart knowledge, right? So these words should be on their hearts, and they shall teach, verse 7, these words to their children. So that's the content, these words. Well, what are these words? Again, it's the law. It's the Ten Commandments. But even more broadly than that, it's the instruction of the Lord, what the Lord has commanded. And who are they to teach? Their children, right? Verse 7. Not just their children, but the next generation, right? It's not necessarily referring exclusively to their biological children, although it means that. But it means that the older generation would teach the younger generation what the Lord has done and what the Lord has instructed of them. And when are they to teach? Well, look at what it says. Verse 7 again. You shall talk of these words, you shall teach these things when you sit down in your house. Okay, so in your homes, right? Little church idea, right? In your homes. Also, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up, like morning, evening, when you're in your house, when you're outside your house. The phrase, you shall teach them diligently, right? Verse 7, here's another question. How do we teach them? Well, diligently, which implies sort of formal instruction, catechesis. We passed along, you should have gotten a little care kit by now. And in that care kit were some liturgies where you guys parents could read aloud to their kids the scriptures and prayers and creeds and catechisms, the question and answer. Who made you? God. What else did God make? God made all things. Why did God make you in all things? For his own glory, right? The child responds to the answer. So that's formal Christian instruction. And that's what's being commanded here, right? Teach them diligently. But there's also informal instruction implied, right? Talk of them when you walk by the way, when you sit in your house, when you're in your house, outside of your house. Take advantage of these opportunities, right? That's what's being communicated here. And so this is significant, what Deuteronomy 6 is prescribing. And really it's only just a sampling of more instruction, kind of on the same themes of parents teaching their children and the faith community teaching the younger generation the things of the Lord. Now, when I was growing up, it was sort of common that you would outsource the faith formation of your children to the church, right? So you might pray at mealtime, but by and large, it was the church's responsibility to kind of get you on the right track. Sunday school, you go to Sunday school, you read a Bible story, and that's the church's job. But that's not the biblical picture that we have here. The church supports the family, and that's why we're trying to provide these videos. And the church does provide teaching and instruction, but the parents shoulder the load of the faith formation of their children. That's what's being prescribed here in Deuteronomy chapter 6, which creates a challenge for us, right? Because we have to be disciples in that setting, right? Think of it this way: you can't give what you don't have, right? So if you want to impart the faith and the things of God to your children, you've got to have those things. That's why teaching is so instruction is so important. That the instructor has been grabbed by the material, by the content. They have a passion for what they're teaching. We've all had teachers that just could clearly care less about what they were teaching. They hadn't been grabbed by it. Well, how much more so when we're teaching them the things of God? So we have to be, as parents and as teachers, grabbed by it. Because you can't give what you don't have, and that's what that's kind of basic teaching principle. There's more to say, but I think that does it for this video. We will continue this as we move forward. See you next time.